born, brought up in Bombay, but grew up with asthma. During Diwali, my parents would have to take me off to some, hill station because I couldn't survive the firecrackers in the city. Because people have lived with air pollution for so long, they think it's helping build immunity. 7 million people are dying. Every 10 microgram increase in particulate matter leads to approximately 1.2% decrease in your thinking ability.
So I'm dumber in pollution.
You're dumber, your focus is lesser.
Now I've solved why Delhi is this dumb. We don't know why this happens. We have some guesses. Some of them are political guesses. Some of them are either.
We know why it happens. Maybe the answer is not as publicly stated.
Why does it happen?
I mean,
everywhere else in the world, when there is a construction happening, what you do is a prefab. But here, everything happens on site. And the dust and the noise pollution, that is insane.
This would not be permissible in another country. It's a chalta hai approach, right? Politicians, I have to be very careful about this, but
To help with vulnerable classes, frankly, I was speaking with Brian Johnson in Mumbai. He's
working with us, by the way, on the air purification stuff.
Makes complete sense, right? I was speaking with him as well. And if he starts detailing all the things we are letting into our lungs, it's a very morbid thing to listen to. And so this is a problem facing us right in the face for whatever political reason, for whatever lack of scientific rigor in our bureaucratic community. I don't know what the reason is. We don't know why this happens. We have some guesses. Some of them are political guesses. Some of them are guesses to alter the narrative from political soft points, right? Like
we know why it happens. Maybe the answer is not as publicly stated on why.
Why does it happen?
Yeah, so I mean, one is there's a large number of sources, right? And if you look at Delhi by itself, it's almost like a bowl, Delhi's geography, right? Surrounded by mountains on multiple sides. And because in winter season, of course, inversion happens because the surface temperature of the city is colder. Like usually what happens is as you go higher, the temperature decreases. But in Delhi, because during winter the surface is also cold, it causes inversion, which means there's a layer of hot air trapped between two layers of cold air. And suddenly the particles which were otherwise supposed to go high up get trapped onto the breathing level, right?
Really?
Right. So that inversion is causing it to be that abundant. But the sources are also the issue. Everyone says stubble burning, and yes, it has a contribution to it. Second is infrastructure development, right? If you look at projects across the country, they're not coordinated. So especially in Bombay, right, there's a metro construction happening, a bridge construction happening. They still want to change the pipe below the road on the same day. And then the building is also being redeveloped next to it. So the sheer amount of dust that is getting generated is exponentially higher than what it used to be decades ago. Now add to that quick commerce and mobility, where you have suddenly 10,000 times the number of motorcycles and cars on the street.
10,000?
It's actually, that's an arbitrary number,
sure.
But the numbers
but
it's a
5x, 10x, right,
significant multiple, right? The sheer amount of particulate matter and volatile organic compounds being generated per square kilometers is now exponentially higher than it used to be. And so in winter, when this is clubbed with inversion, that pollution has no escape. And as a result, you see such high compounding of the particulate matter in the city.
Very interesting. So on some level, you do say that the stubble burning is contributory.
Yes.
Then there is a geographical thing happening in Delhi where, because it's a bowl-shaped structure, in the winters, what happens is there's a layer of cold air, which is where all this particulate matter is accumulated, and then a layer of hot air, and then another layer of cold air.
So the layer of cold air is literally your surface temperatures, your buildings and so on.
Right.
Yeah.
And so because the hot air is above, it won't let all the particulate matter float up. But on the contrary, I've always wondered, Mumbai is by the sea.
Yeah.
There is, what is it called, easterly or westerlies, whatever, right? There's a wind blowing always from the sea or back. The temperature alteration between water being cold and land being hot and so on. So there is a wind cycle happening. Why, in that case, is the geography not compounding in the opposite direction?
Chances are you've seen a clip from my podcast. Probably a laugh, a confession, a moment no one expected, but that's just a glimpse. The real conversation is something else. It's when people forget the cameras, when they stop performing and let you see who they really are. That's when it gets good. That's when it feels real. These moments don't come from scripts. They just happen, and they stay with you, not because they're perfect, but because they're real. Conversations like these don't happen everywhere. Subscribe and be part of it.
This is Bombay. I can isolate to infrastructure development right now, because I mean, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, the air quality was much better than it is today.
Agreed.
But at the same time, we have coastal road, we have metro project. Most of the old buildings are going into redevelopment. My building included, right? So these are 50-year-old buildings that were made, in 1947 post. They all need to break down, and they're all happening asynchronously.
Yeah, I see that. It's very stupid, bro. Matlab, I didn't know this, but I was talking to somebody about pollution privately. Somebody who's semi-involved in the bureaucratic space, and they said everywhere else in the world, when there is a construction happening, what you do is a prefab, which is that in factory, proper pieces already built arrive and you just insert them and build a house or build a building and so on and so forth. But here, everything happens on site. And the dust and the noise pollution, that is insane.
Yeah.
How is that normal? आज मैं सुबह उठा, मेरे घर के पीछे वाले स्कूल में ऐसा लग रहा था पता नहीं ढोल पीट रहे हैं. Like what? समझ रहा है? Like, and apart from that, it's also that sound that slowly loses dust. All this mud lying everywhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why do you think is that the case? Isn't that very interesting कि हम लोग prefab नहीं करते? Isn't that cheaper?
I think it's more so like construction belief. People think that, hey, if I've laid the steel wires myself and then put the liquid concrete there, I've built a structure that I can count on. And also prefab cost of transportation, handling, all this, people don't trust the local labor to actually execute it. Just a good example is when we make our house or you make this studio, right? You design it a certain way. Does the finish always match the design?
No.
Yeah. Now, why is that the case? It's not an engineering issue, right? Or a resource issue. You spent the same money, you bought the same material. It's a finishing issue, which means the attention to detail that used to exist in building modern infrastructure no longer does. A good test is we've seen the coastal road being built. It's a beautiful monument for the city. You'll see there's a leveling difference between two adjacent pillars. And it's not it's not an engineering hazard or something because it's such large pieces. So small deviations lead to larger deviations over a long. But this would not be permissible in another country.
Right. And so you were saying that we have a relaxed standard for errors.
Yes.
And do you think is that a psychological issue in Indians or is that a bureaucratic issue?
It's a chalta hai approach, right? Which is a psychological.
Right.
Because, oftentimes I get our manufacturing vendors used to hate working with us early days because it was so picky. If I say space gray, it needs to be this color tone of space gray. Two identical, two hives cannot have different colors. And they'd say it's still gray. It's like gray is a broad spectrum, right? I want this shade of gray so that the shine looks a certain way in different light. So that chalta hai approach that I give you gray color, but I asked for a specific shade of gray is a clear indicator of and it's abundant everywhere, right? Even from the carpenter in the house who'll install your brand new TV, it will be slightly slant. It's okay, man. Yeah, right? What are you gonna do?
No, I think the largest testament to the chalta hai attitude is the fact that every winter, every October, we just gear the up. Everybody sits at home being like, अब अगले महीने से फटने वाली है, सब लोग ready हो जाओ. अच्छा तुमने air purifier साफ करवाया? अरे Dyson का air purifier. Bro, I think there is a silent tax on the Indian existence we don't talk about. For instance, if I have to operate this in Faridabad or anywhere else in India except Mumbai, I have to install a generator. Because despite my taxpayer money, I do not get continuous supply of electricity. And there's two reasons. One, you can say there's a resource allocation problem and we don't really have electricity for everybody. And Prakhar, count your privilege. Or you can actually go and talk to people who work for Bijli Vibhag and figure out ki exactly cuts hote kyun hai. And the things you'll find out you'll not really like. Right? Then, मैं सड़कों पे गड्ढे हैं उसका मेंटेनेंस जो होगा मेरी गाड़ी पे आएगा आई एम गोइंग टू पे फॉर दैट मनी सो इन सो मेनी वेज बिकॉज पब्लिक वर्क्स इज नॉट प्रॉपरली डन the consumer is charged an extra silent tax that makes your disposable income even smaller. So an air purifier that, and air purifiers range from anywhere between 10-15K to 1.5 lakh rupees. जो आदमी लाख रुपए दे रहा है एयर प्योरीफायर के लिए क्योंकि उसके दादाजी की तबीयत खराब है एंड व्हाटएवर he'll take वो सैलरी में से काट के देगा अपनी. Bro, that's a tax he doesn't deserve. Right? And at some point, somebody has to take accountability for this. How are we so blind to this? I'm curious. There's a regulatory problem. I'm sure we can talk about it endlessly. But there's also a cultural, psychological problem that you must encounter when you talk about pollution to people, right? What is that like?
Underlying sentiment is that the urgency is missing. Now, for humanity, I'm looking at all the products and services we buy and how we prioritize our life. To make something urgent, it either needs to be aspirational, or you need to have made peace with the fact that you're actually seeing health repercussions, like how insurance is sold to you, right? What happens if you get into a car accident tomorrow? So you know that's believable. Because people have lived with air pollution for so long, they think it's helping build immunity. That's not the case for real. Like, so many people tell me, hey, like, what happens if I go out? It's like, you spend 90% of your time indoor, literally. Like, you're at home, office, school. You're not out in the open environment for more than 2.5 hours in a day. And that too, if you're like actually traveling to work and so on, you go from your house to your car to your office, it's all closed. So if you tell me that, hey, what happens if I go out and it's going to affect my lungs? Like, firstly, you care about total exposure time, not the 1 or 2 instances where the exposure occurs. Second is that clogging your lungs with particles is not called building immunity. Yeah. Immunity is built against learning how to deal with foreign particles or, viral loads or whatever. Not that, hey, let me take in AQI word to 1700 or 1800 and as a result I'm building better lung capacity. You're actually like killing your lung capacity. So I think I wouldn't like blame entirely on politicians, because you've spoken with many of them on this podcast as well, right? So I think for politicians, they're like, okay, I'm going to allocate some money and I'm going to trust the IITs or whoever to try and solve it. Now, I'm indifferent to the brand. Globally, or even in your workplace, if you have to accomplish a task and you give it to a resource and year on year it's not performing, you're going to change the resource. We have not changed the resource. We're giving the same people who've not succeeded at solving the problem more and more money and time to solve the problem.
By this, do you mean the bureaucrats?
Not just like, I have to be very careful about this, but like, I think not just bureaucrats, I think to some extent some of them. Then there's certain governmental agencies, there's certain labs and educational institutes to whom this money is given. I'm not saying that money is getting misused. I'm just saying that, hey, whenever we want to solve a critical problem, you want to give it to the most competent person to solve that problem, as opposed to the best brand to solve the problem.
No, yeah, absolutely.
Right? So that's where my point is coming from. It's like, I see the intent, right? And the intent is, I want to do something because I want to be the hero who solved this problem. That's the political angle to this, right? Please be the hero. But then what's limiting you is that you're giving it to the same people who've not succeeded in the last decade. You have to change the approach entirely, right? To try and solve it.
There is a very interesting idea I came across that I had no words to describe previously, from reading Nassim Taleb. And it's a popular idea now. It's called skin in the game. The idea being that you need to sort of, the person that is performing the task needs to have upside and downside in the task for it to actually matter. If they have no upside and downside and it does not change the course of their life, there is no way you can expect a rational agent to behave rationally, right? Like, it's not going to be rational about it and get passionate. And very often, there can be a decay in handing off problems to agents that cannot be fired. Yeah. If somebody cannot be fired, if they know they have perfect immunity, they also do not have the largest incentive to... And one version of saying this is, if all bureaucrats and politicians sent their kids and their family members to government schools and government hospitals, the quality would improve. Yeah. Because now there's skin in the game. Now their kids have to be educated. And look, I get it. The discomfort also I get. We're not here to blame people.
Yeah.
Especially you. You're here to solve this.
Yeah. Big time solving. And the whole idea of saying this is that the advantage that startups offer is that we have a smoking gun, right? We'll run out of capital. So we have finite time to build a product or service that actually works, find paying customers and scale exponentially with those paying customers so that we are able to generate venture scale returns for our investors.
Right. That's a tough line.
Right. Yeah. So I'm not saying that, hey, politicians, the conversation is not about them, right? And in fact, they've created platforms where we can somehow figure out how to get our products and services introduced over time. But that's where I feel changing the approach to letting more startup-y type people who have a deadline to solve the problem by is going to yield better outcomes in a shorter period of time.
I agree. I think the entrepreneur's true task is to make the impossible possible, at least if you're doing it right. And by doing it right, like, I think there's also types of entrepreneurship, in the sense that you could solve a trading problem, and that's a form of entrepreneurship. I could solve a media vacuum, and that's a form of entrepreneurship. But then there's hard problems. There's innovation, right? What sets apart Elon when we talk about the technologists of Silicon Valley is that, sure, all of them, a lot of them have done grand scale innovations. Amazon's brilliant, Facebook's brilliant. But building a product that transcends human imagination and takes you to Mars, or puts a chip in your head, or gets you a car that drives automatically and reliably, and that's Elon, right? Like, where it's a hard problem being solved through material, through engineering, through these sciences. And that's what sets him apart. He becomes an innovator in this traditional 60s, 70s way, where now innovation is limited to a new app, which is a incremental innovation on the phone being the base technology. And so I think you're solving a hard problem, and I think that's very interesting. Did you walk into this, like you did say you walked into this thinking it's a hard problem, right?
I didn't think it was as hard as it's turned out to be.
Right.
It's probably like, if without exaggeration, at least 3 to 4 orders of magnitude harder than I expected it to be.
Yeah, you were also a sophomore student when you decided that. You didn't have much
Yeah.
experience of the world.
I mean, I had experience, like I wouldn't say experience in the, I just like, a lot of the ideas at that time were very utopian. And the idea was very like, under the belief that if you build it, they will come. And that did happen to some extent. But we did not account the delays, times, and non-alignment that will occur for a problem that's still so large and abundant and affecting everyone.
Yeah, say this more specifically. Actually, take me back to sophomore year college.
Yeah.
What's happening where you're like, ab main isko solve karunga? What's the conversation that's happening after that? Walk me through that.
Yeah, so I mean, idea was, hey, I have, Georgia Tech is a pretty demanding school, but I should not lose my passion for building things as a function of purely pursuing academia. And at that point, I was at a stage after working with Ramesh that if I spent time building things, it needed to have like a massive outcome, not monetary outcome specifically, but I need to solve a difficult problem. So nowadays, if you like, very often I'm like a few days ago, someone was pitching me their VR startup on the treadmill. I was like, dude, I'm sure it has merit, but I'm not the guy to talk to about this VR startup. So I mean, sophomore year of college, the thought process was, there's so many sources of pollution. We can't go after every source. Neither can we rely on the government to solve this problem, because it is a longer process and I don't know how to run that process. So if we have to solve the problem at large scale, can we build filterless air purification systems, so like large towers? But if you make them filterless, there'll be no recurring cost of ownership barring energy. And if you can make it inexpensive enough at scale, you can put millions of these into urban streets, so that irrespective of the source of the dust, your rate of capture on that street is higher than the rate of introduction on that street.
Now explain it to me like I'm 5.
Sure. So, filterless, I mean, all our air purifiers have HEPA filters.
The things that trap the air particles.
Correct.
Yes.
It's like a sophisticated version of a cloth or a paper filter, right?
Microfiber hota hai, aisa kuch rehta hai.
Correct,
Haan.
right? Now, if you put it outside, it's going to choke up within half an hour.
Because there's so much matter.
Correct.
ठीक है.
Right? So now if imagine city scale, if you build these massive systems which are filled with filters, changing it every hour is not affordable for an economy.
Sure.
So to make clean air outdoors possible, your device has to be filterless. Correct? Which is where a lot of our IP is. How do you make filterless air purifiers and scale them? The second thing is, you want to make it cheap enough, like a street lamp or some small thing that we see around the street, where you can put millions of them on the street, right? So if you make it filterless and you make it cheap enough, you can actually make it abundant.
Sure.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first chain of thought. Second chain of thought is, air pollution is unique on every street. So it's the architecture, the wind conditions, the sources all affect how the pollution flows on that street. Now, we can't assign a full-blown engineering team to every street in the city, which means we need a imaging and AI-based method that can auto-solve this pollution street by street using these filterless towers. This is what I was thinking in sophomore year, right? So that if you build this abundant hardware solution, which you can make for 5, 10, 50,000 rupees at scale, and then you put them all across the city, the cost of that is still less than 1% of the loss of productivity induced by the air pollution.
You know this for a fact, or was
I
this
know
your
this for a
hypothesis?
fact. No.
That the amount of productivity. So let's say you are doing it for 10,000, and for a city like Mumbai, you probably need, I want to say 50,000 of these to cover the city.
So like there's a street lamp every 40 feet. Right. So let's look at the population dense areas and put it across.
But what is an estimate of a number you need in Mumbai for these?
So 50,000 is a good ballpark. There are more street lamps, but you'll not put it everywhere. So
yeah. So 50,000 into 10,000 is about 50 crores.
Yeah.
Right? 500 crores.
500
crores. Yeah. And you're saying 500 crores is 1% of the productivity loss.
It's not even 1%.
It's not even 1%.
Yeah.
So practically, I'm losing about 50,000 crores worth of productivity in a year from not solving the pollution issue.
7 million people are dying. Every 10 microgram increase in particulate matter leads to approximately 1.2% decrease in your thinking ability. This is a study by Harvard.
Oh, so I'm dumber in pollution.
You're dumber, your focus is lesser. Kids in Delhi who are studying in school in air pollution, now even in Bombay and other places, their focus is nothing, man. And Harvard put this study out a couple of months ago. They did it with a bunch of students saying, what is the mathematical score affected by every 10 microgram increase, English, cognition, and there's a paper on it.
And you were finding that if you isolate only the increase in pollution, you find a decrease in cognitive ability.
Correct.
By what factor?
I think the number was for every 10 microgram increase, it was 1.2% or something like that.
Oh. Now I've solved why Delhi is this dumb. I for context, this is how I put it to my mental model, right? In the 40s and the 50s, smoking was not just legal everywhere. It was almost encouraged through advertising. It was the cool, the it, right? And pollution's not that, but what that led to is widespread smoking. To the point that 40 years hence, when the 20-year-olds were 60-year-olds, the 30-year-olds were 70-year-olds, we found that lung cancer rates spiked.
Yeah.
Then you can see this with the Indian diet specifically, in the way things happen in India. We have one of the most obese populations, one of the most cardiac issues per so many people, and then most diabetes in the world, that kind of stuff. This is happening because in the 70s and 80s, certain nutritional choices were made that in the 2020s are being reflected.
5 chapatis per meal, right?
Or GMO or GMO based grains. We don't truly understand the mechanism, but something was happening there. In the 2010s and 20s, we are watching this uptick of pollution that by the time we are hitting 2050, we'll be the older generation that did not figure it out. The younger ones will be sitting being like, aapko samajh kaise nahi aaya ki cigarette nahi peete? Right? People in the early 2000s could just look around and be like, were you stupid for thinking you could smoke this much and not get lung cancer? It becomes so obvious in hindsight. But while we are living in the moment, we find a way to cognitively disassociate ourselves from it. We find a way to go on as if it does not matter or we can figure it out. But that's not really how it works. Time is a great leveler in that way.
I always say that air pollution is the most difficult pandemic we're dealing with and we don't even know it. Right? COVID hit us because the symptoms were immediate. Here the symptoms will develop over decades, but your exposure is every day.
Yeah.
So imagine if you had to breathe the COVID virus all day, every day, and then you'd see the impact at an exponential compounded rate 10 years or 15 years later. That's the equivalent of what we're doing with air pollution.
I promised myself that I don't want to get into nightmare scenarios in this conversation because they're infinite. You know what I mean, right?
We'll make it
hopeful. The pitch is not very difficult. You're like, suno, main tumhe kahani sunata hu. And then you give them the Mukesh ad, but for...
No, but it's pretty bad because people say, like, I'm dealing with all these, like, boomers, right? So the boomer sitting across me is like, hey, I've always, like, this is the air I'm used to breathing, and they can't even decipher the difference. Like, we shot a testimonial video with a customer who's the Hinduja family who uses our product, right? So old grandparents. And he said, when I grew up in Bombay, we would just have the approach that aaj hawa saaf hai, aaj hawa kharab hai. That's all they would think about it, right? But today when he's using our product now for almost 2 years and he uses it every day before like when he's sleeping at night, right? It's like I can starkly feel the difference. I live on Marine Drive in Bombay. What is the benefit of living on the sea and having these expensive houses if your air quality is this bad? In Marine Drive in Bombay, this guy's house air quality is in the 200s. That's not like, that's the prime real estate that you can expect.
When
right?
the entire city of LA burned down,
Yeah.
in a historic fire never seen in 100 years, the air quality went up to a 60 or a 70.
No, I mean, it got worse. Like it was in the 200s to 300 range during the forest fire. But yeah.
On a random Tuesday in October,
Yeah.
it's over 1,000 here in Delhi.
Right.
Like, it's still no comparison.
Yeah.
Even if I'm wrong by a factor of 2,
Yeah,
right?
no,
It's
yeah,
still no...
yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And you are very right. Like, why am I paying prime real estate? What's the point? Is it aesthetic quality? Should I live in a huge house that I can afford only for the air and water to be bad? You start prying into the psychological reasons. Like, I'll have this conversation with my dad, right? Papa, you should move somewhere to the mountains. You are, you're getting of a certain age, and it's best if you breathe clean air and get good water and, more organic food. And he'll be like, bro, but beta, hamara circle sara yahan hai. Right? And maybe that's how it is. Maybe that's how I'll be when I'm his age. Maybe that's how I'm calcified into. But it's not first principles enough.
Yeah.
Hai na? Am I missing something? Am I
No,
being stupid about it?
This is the same. So the realization was that while you and I can move to another country as students with a cleaner environment, you can't expect your friends and family to do the same. And so if you have the ability to try and solve this problem, you should at least take a shot at it, right? And that was the psychology or thought process behind starting Pran. You can always go and start an AI company or an electric vehicle company at the time. Right, I worked on energy storage as well, and we deployed, I think, it got deployed in Haiti during 2020. Right? So we've done the stuff apart from air pollution as well. But this is, I think, one of the most important problems to try and solve of our time, because it's not only an India problem today, right? When you see 90% of humanity breathes poor air today. There are very select countries in the world which actually have WHO standard air quality.
Like which ones? Scandinavians?
Yes, some Scandinavian countries, very, very small European countries where population is like, 10,000, 50,000, like towns, basically. I cannot, if I remember correctly, even some cities in Switzerland did not have WHO standard air quality.
Now, are there any cities in Asia or Africa that have WHO standard quality? Anywhere?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I may be wrong, but there are, I think, 7 or 8 in the world which have this.
That's insane.
Yeah. So I think, 5 microgram per meter cube is, I don't think this room has 5 microgram per meter cube.
Bro, when Brian was sitting in the room with me,
Yeah.
and I mean, that famously happened on Nikhil's podcast where he walked away because apparently the room they were shooting in had outside circulation, right? My question, what I'm trying to understand is, once you decide you're going to do this, a hard problem to solve, you're well equipped because you're still at college where there's a lot of resource in terms of intellectual capital and such. What happens from there? How are you building it? What are the obstacles you're finding? What are the tech challenges you're having?
So Filterless, like the thing is, one is there's a lot of like past work done on this, but never in an aggressive manner where we want to do it at city scale or large space, right? There's a lot of research that existed on building filters, putting the filter in your HVAC system and so on. But what happens when you want to make it filterless, intelligent, low cost, make it into a semi-product form? And I say semi-product because it's not, at the time we were not building like a consumer product, right? And so there's not a lot of context there. Second is that Georgia Tech is a state school, right? So if they sponsored my research, they'd own it. So, and the challenge with that is that I always felt the urgency on this problem that, hey, we need to have the decision-making ability on whatever we do with this technology, whether you write a paper, open source it, start a company, there should not be anyone governing what happens with this technology that we build. So I had to build it on my own out of my dorm room, and I could not actually use Georgia Tech resources to do it.
Interesting.
But what came out of it was, there's a Professor Joel Harris who was director of social innovation at Georgia Tech, and I told her I'm doing this. I said, can you at least be a mentor so that if other people want to join it, they find credibility in joining it. And so I got very lucky that because of the stuff that I was doing with MIT and on my own, there was a lot of media attention intermediately throughout my life. And so when I went to Georgia Tech, I think a couple of months later, CNN wrote to me saying, hey, what are you up to and what are you building? And I told them I'm trying this moonshotty thing and I have a prototype. they came down and shot that video at Georgia Tech.
Oh, they came down.
Yeah. And so when they shot it and they put it in that first weekend, the video went viral. And it was far more than I expected. It was Dr. Sanjay, I think Sanjay Agarwal or Sanjay Gupta, sorry. He was very famous. He was the one narrating my story, and a lot of B-rolls from the factory, etc.
Right.
From the lab. And when that video went viral, a lot of people at Georgia Tech, Emory wrote to me saying, hey, I love this. I want to work with you on what you're building here. And so that what started with me alone eventually grew to 180 people volunteering their time to help solve air pollution. And these were, of course, college students, but then also Tesla, Apple, SpaceX engineers who found this is such a hard engineering problem. Some of them had roots back to India. And they're like, hey, I want to try and solve this and support this kid in any way I can. And what we did is saying, hey, on F1 visa, you can't actually run a business while a student. So we ran it as a project. In fact, once the Georgia Tech International Student Department thought I was running a company, so they, told me, hey, you're going to get deported. If I was like, no, man, there's no entity register. It's just a LinkedIn page with a logo so that people can show that, hey, they worked on this project and get credibility later. That, helps with jobs and so on, right?
Right.
So all of these are in hindsight look like small hurdles, but when you're a student and your college's international student department writes to you saying, hey, we need to look into what you're doing in this college, and you're like, man, I'm trying to solve this really hard problem and it's just so I'm not making any money. In fact, the money I'm saving from not going out on weekends is getting pumped into building this hardware. So those are not supportive instances, right, in your journey. And you realize that, hey, while you have now all this great talent working with you, you still have to perform academically in school. And Georgia Tech is a brutal school, man. We don't have A minus B plus, right? You have A, B, C, D, F. And if you don't get a C, you actually have to repeat the course at Georgia Tech. So you have 4 questions on a test, no curve in most of the classes I took. So you get 1 question wrong, you're on a C. So that's a really hard engineering school.
Bro, I didn't know my friends were that smart. I have a lot of friends who went to Georgia Tech. I always thought, but yeah, that's brutal.
Yeah.
For people that don't understand, a curve is basically normalizing the grade. So for instance, the highest guy gets 80 and the next one gets 79, you basically make it 198, right? You move up the score or move down the score depending on what the average is. And so this is just basically 2 out of 4 and you're out.
Yeah. And you have
this
to repeat the class.
crorepati, bro.
Yeah. No, but so and the thing is, I took also a crazy person. I took some hard classes, and so the professors were equally eccentric and they were very accomplished, right? There's a guy who worked with Intel on the first chip, that kind of person.
I know exactly what you're talking about, right?
So he would wake up at 8 in the morning, think of the questions, and then print it out. And at 9, the test is in front of you. You can't look at past papers in practice, and you need to know your shit to be able to clear that test, right? So if you're trying to build this moonshot and you're studying at a hard college, and parents will still I'm very blessed. I have very supportive parents who let me do all this madness, but they would also be like, hey, you are getting all these interesting opportunities from a Tesla or a Microsoft. Maybe you should consider it just for the experience. Go do it. But I was like, man, every day spent not working on this is killing millions of people globally. Right? And they perhaps don't understand because they're also from the generation who think that, hey, air quality builds immunity. Poor air quality builds immunity. So the urgency was not as abundant in others, and it had to come from me. So while we started building the technology and build prototypes, then I started to pitch it to venture capital in early 20, before pre-COVID. And then most of the VCs, actually, there was no real deep tech fund in India. There were 1 or 2, but they wouldn't have the risk appetite for something like this. I pitched to all of the traditional VCs. Everybody has passed on it. Then one random VC and an actor pulled together some money to offer it to us. And then COVID hit and that offer went away as well. So we had no way to finance it. But we continued to build it. And we realized in COVID, a lot of people have lost jobs and are working from home. Students have lost internships. So we started a remote intern program to just keep some technology momentum going while I continued to pitch to VCs. We got first set of term sheets in early 2021. We signed it. The money never came.
Why?
So basically we had 4 term sheets, and this VC who gave us the term sheet said, okay, this is apparently a hot company. I should put in a very aggressive term sheet so that at least we can get the opportunity to do the deal. the intent was never to do the deal. The intent was, hey, I'm going to be opportunistic and throw in a term sheet and think about it. So you should know what the company does before you offer a term sheet. But here's like, hey, these 4 reputed funds have given this guy a term sheet. And what happened is I aligned all the firms to this term sheet. So now suddenly I only have one offer, right? And after signing term sheet is when they started thinking about it, asking questions, and they realized that, hey, they don't have the deep tech understanding or appetite to be able to do this. They're a media tech VC. Right? And so suddenly the cold feet comes, and instead of telling, hey, we are going back on our deal, they just slow rolled it till we ran out of money. So to justify it to LPs internally, they said, oh, we're going to take advisory equity into the company. And all the other VCs are furious with me, saying, what the
hell did you do?
Yeah, right. And what are you doing? Like, hey, we committed. Why aren't you actually taking the money? Where are the documents? And what do you tell the... Like, hey, the lead investor is taking all these months. So in end of May, we literally ran into negative capital. I took money from my family to continue to pay our bills. And then in June, after 4 months, I wrote back to the investors.
This is June 21?
Yeah, 21.
June, right.
I wrote back to our investors saying, those investors who had offered us some money saying, hey, this deal is not happening. I'm going to walk away. Then they got urgent and furious and sent an SHA. But I was like,
What's an SHA?
Shareholders, like it's a share subscription agreement, right?
Sure.
It's what all the investors sign before they wire you funds. So, and I got lucky that at the time I was part of something called Emergent Ventures in the US. So Emergent Ventures is a program started by Tyler Cowen, who's a more reputed economist.
George Mason.
George Mason, right?
I love him.
Yes,
He's
Tyler's
so smart.
Pran wouldn't exist without Tyler.
Really?
If he would have gone bankrupt, he knows, I know him very well.
Dude, you have to set me in, you have to put me in touch.
Okay.
Tyler Cowen, for people that do not know, I'm a huge fan, so just let me. Tyler Cowen's an economist at George Mason University. He runs his podcast, also Conversations with Tyler, which is where I discovered him. I actually discovered him on Eric's podcast called The Portal. And Tyler speaks with the pragmatism of an economist in its true spirit.
Yeah.
Like, there is no fluff, there is no emotional... Like, when he talks about a subject, I realize how many emotional barriers I had around that issue to not see the problem clearly. He's a fucking genius if there is one. Yeah. Especially when it comes to verbally communicating what he thinks. Hands down. Anyway.
So many times he's in fact, like, I think this was in 2023, he got me to Arlington where he runs his EV conference every year, and he was very kind late night. Him and Dr. Shruti Rajgopalan, who runs Emergent Ventures India, spent so much time thinking about Pran and isolated, right? This is like priceless, the kind of like detailed thinking, because I'll get into some of the venture stuff. But so basically Tyler gave us one grant earlier, which helped keep us afloat. Then he gave us a second grant when this venture capital failure happened, that, hey, the company just needs to be alive. And then he wrote 3 emails. I can't go into like all 3 like Silicon Valley titans, right?
Like Elon.
No, I mean, he's an entrepreneur. I'm saying investor titans, right?
Like Peter Thiel.
Right.
But you can't say that.
Yeah. So he wrote to, of course, like, I think Peter's fund, Mark Andreessen, and then Social Impact Capital, who actually led around. And turns out these people are LPs in Social Impact Capital that invested. So Social Impact Capital spoke with us, I think, on 2 15-minute calls. There was an offer to lead our round.
Wow.
18 months I couldn't raise capital in India. A person who's never been to India and just spoke to us twice offered us the money.
Isn't it interesting that people who are surrounded by the problem cannot... Like, are there any other... Maybe your startup, your way of solving the pollution problem is too radical.
Yeah.
And so... Maybe there are other startups that these VCs are probably happy investing in because that would solve the problem in a safer way, something they understand that fits their risk appetite. Are there any other?
Yes, there are people who are like putting a fan below a plant and then calling it an air purifier. Then there's somebody who is buying filters from Faridabad and also from China and putting it on top of ACs, right? And saying the AC is an air purifier now. And then there are people who are importing purifiers from China, rebranding it and selling it in India. So this is a more fathomable business for a venture capitalist, traditional Indian venture.
But this is a trading business.
This is a trading business. So, but even for our company, Pran, while we started with something crazy radical, we took this technology into very real world use cases. So our filterless tech we put onto industry shop floors, right? So we serve like for
Like
confidentiality reasons, I can't name the companies, but like the largest pigment company, cosmetic chemicals, like the chocolates that we eat, in all those shop floors, our machines are installed, right? Like hazardous agrochemical materials, right? We prevent them from going outside. We capture it and put it back. Steel companies, cement,
Right.
all of these are huge pollution sources for the city. Our devices are deployed on the shop floor. Not only do they reduce the pollution, that material goes back into the production line.
Oh, so you gather that material?
Yes.
You don't filter it out. You filter it and keep it.
We
somehow.
filter it, collect it, and they can just open the drawer and dump the material back into the production process. So there's also a material reduction. There's an ROI on the because they're saving like tons of material, literally like tons, right? And it's tons daily. In one of the applications in the pigment company, I think per kg of material is 7,000 rupees. In a day per point, we recover 40 kgs for them.
Wait, explain that to me. Per kg of material is?
To them
Is 7,000.
Is 7,000. So in a day, at each of the points where my machine is deployed, we recover 40 kgs for them.
Whoa.
So there's an ROI on the machine. Now, how can you tell me there's no venture model or this is not a business? And there's like, of course, positive unit economics, like considerable positive unit economics. There's a recurring element because there's a SaaS element to the whole piece, right? If you can't fathom this, I don't know, like then you're not the right person to talk to.
Look, I'm pretty sure people sitting in shiny VC offices are very smart, very accomplished people.
Yes.
Some of them been entrepreneurs themselves. Some of them have built up and then moved into VC. Some of them probably trained in VC over a long period of time. They've seen life more than you and I have seen. And I still can parallelly imagine a circumstance where, bro, you're a unicorn. In my line of business also, to find somebody who's doing something truly innovative in this country, boss, go check out the whiteboards outside. It's filled with names we cross out every day because we're like, मैं क्या बात करूँगा? Like there's nothing new. It's like I'm finding a TikTok copy founder. Like a lot of businesses in tech in India are either convenience businesses because we're a convenience economy. We love staying in our castles that we build for ourselves where everything is beautiful and things come into us, or are in fintech, which is another form of convenience in a certain way because banks can be banks. There's very rarely novel businesses that spring out of India. There are novel challenges in India, and that was my question. जिस आदमी के ऑफिस के बाहर की हवा खराब है वो बेट नहीं कर रहा. सिलिकॉन वैली में तो मस्त है, कोई हवा का इतना इशू नहीं है ब्रो. लाइक यू नो इट्स अ ब्यूटीफुल प्लेस टू बी. They're betting. That's very odd.
Yeah, and when I'm aligned with it, it's not that Pran doesn't get offers from these VCs. Let's be honest. We don't get from everybody, but we get from some of the better ones in the country. But the terms, like, we're still a Silicon Valley company. We started in the US. Our core team was in the US. We did this crazy R&D, which otherwise would cost $50 million to bring to market. We killed ourselves to do it in $2 million, right? And still get it working and get product market fit and a scaling business built out of it, right? So you can't say that because it's an India thing, I will underprice it. And that's not fair because that's like you're pricing it as an India company, even though it's a global company. Like we have projects in Dubai and US, man. I can't price it as a India. It's a larger than India story, right? So that's on the venture fund. But I think the exciting part of what we ended up building is, sure, we build the industrial business. But then in the industrial business as well, if you look at how all of us are, I was telling you before this podcast, right, we are from a very scarcity mindset. In fact, our friend Varun, who was in my office a few weeks ago, right, Varun Maya, he said, dude, when I read about Pran, I thought it's too good to be true. I thought you're a Chinese drop shipping company. So I had to come and see it.
That's what I told you.
Right.
I was like, ये वो सस्ते में clean कर रहा होगा हवा की, मतलब एक polythene का wrapper लगा दिया, because that's as far as my imagination for a co-patriot doing something innovative goes. कि सस्ता रॉकेट बनाया होगा इसने.
No, we're not cheap at all. In fact, people complain about our cost structure for some of the products because we also have a consumer product now, which is medical grade filtration, etc. Highest performance in its category in the industry. Everyone talks to me about price tag. I said, you'll pay 3 times this price for the Swiss product, which does less than half of what our device does. But you have a complaint on this 50,000 rupee thing. I was like, you don't buy it. But what happens is when I say don't buy it, they end up buying one and they like it enough where I've seen customers buy it 12, 15 times. I think that's if you go to Hive.
This is yours?
Yeah, if you go up. So this is Hive. This is the This is our indoor air purification system.
And how much is this for?
This is 55,000.
55,000.
Yeah.
And do I need any maintenance on this? Is there a yearly charge to it?
No, once you need it, we're not going to be the people who will call you and say buy the filter. You'll see your usage and you can see it in real time, the filter degrading. So in winter, you'll see that, hey, because my start values were in thousands, my filter's running out in 4 months. But like for my hive, I got my hive delivered in January 2024. The first time we serviced it was February 25.
So almost, you said January 24 and February
13 months.
And this is in Bombay?
Bombay.
This is Bombay Air 180, 200?
Yes,
right.
yes. And I use it every single day. And
Every single day?
Every single day. And there's a huge health platform built around it where it's addictive. So we delivered it to this like old couple in Gujarat recently. They were fascinated. My guy couldn't leave their house because there's an AR feature on the app. You can see the pollution in your room. The data is coming from the product, but no one knows what 200 ppm means. You can just open the app and see it floating around you. And so suddenly that auntie was like, this is insane. She went to every room of her house and was playing around with the app and trying to... So the fact that a lot of the stuff that Hive has done is first of its kind in the industry. How do you make this Apple-esque product in India?
You said Apple-esque.
Apple-esque.
In the design part of it.
Not just design. How do you manufacture it's a MacBook like finish, right? No one's doing this like in India. So
how are you?
We had to set the process. So what about the intellectual property and the R&D and the cost that goes into producing something like this? We couldn't go to a vendor and give him aluminum and say, make it look like this Mac. No one has a clue how to do it. And we're producing all this in Bombay with 90% of raw material sourced locally in India. We import semiconductors and sensors.
I have so many questions.
Yeah.
But I want to understand, you said you don't do filtered, like your whole IP is non-filtered.
So if you go to our industrial product, that has no filter.
That's non-filtered.
Because it's a big system and it deals with very high pollution loads, right? Like in the steel factory you work with, it's 1 lakh, the ppm, right? So that's very high. Now for indoor space, your product has to be really tiny. This is how large the hive is. You want high clean air delivery rate because you want to feel the difference. If you don't feel it, you'll say it's not working.
Right.
Which means I have to make it run like a horse, right?
So it has to sound.
It should not sound. Just the speed at which sound, in fact, will people not buy it saying it's loud.
Achha.
So it has to be quiet. It has to purify air at a crazy fast pace. It has to do it with the highest efficacy so people can trust it. That's why we use medical grade filtration, same stuff used in hospitals and some surgical rooms as well. And then to put it in a tiny form factor. So there's a physics limitation on the filterless tech that if I want the home system to be filterless, it'll be much larger in size because I'm trying to separate very fine particles with very high efficiency very quickly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is the standard price of a air purifier that we might buy for this room? Do you know? क्या कितने का पड़ेगा? Amazon खोल के देख.
You can get like 5,000 to 1.5 lakhs. Like
right. So mentioned. Like if I'm buying a mass premium product, I'm still paying about 20, 15, 17.
So like the big brand everyone buys, right? The cheapest will be 27,000 and the next one is around 56,000 in that.
एक बार खोलियो मेरे को देखना है कि सबसे favorite product क्या दिख रहा है on Amazon. What is the most common price point that people buy this at? Because I want to understand how 55,000. Because you know Indians can get extremely price sensitive for no reason.
Yeah.
Like मैं तेरे को बोल रहा हूँ तू 20,000 रुपए खर्च रहा है, तू 20 और खर्च तेरे को बेस्ट प्रोडक्ट मिल जाएगा, होंगे जेब में, लेकिन वो बिल्कुल उसका दिमाग बंद हो जाएगा. तू 20 और खर्चने की बात कर रहा है. 6, 6.5, 13.
These are all really tiny ones.
These are very tiny ones.
Yeah, so if you go into performance, like good ones are like Sharp. Not this model, but they have 15, 20K, like the 20K Sharp. Right. That's a reasonable one to get.
Right.
Then there's the Cowen, not this cheap one, but Cowen has another 40,000 one, which is really nice.
Right.
So those are the real air purifiers. Then Xiaomi has this I think 15,000, which most people buy today. So this is what is abundantly selling. And then there are, in Delhi, you'll find a lot of Dysons.
Yeah.
In Bombay also, Dyson is now a showpiece in the house. It's not really a...
It's like your Bose.
Yeah, so they have the Dyson, but then they have 2 other air purifiers so that the air is actually clean in the room. I'm nothing against Dyson.
This is entrepreneur humor or what? This is you roasting?
No. It's a great looking product, but see, this is 40, but I don't know what is 40. So they have like a 57,000 one, which is the 68. This is what the rich people use.
Yeah, this is what rich people use.
Yeah.
It's so spot on. Because this is the one I'm imagining. I have a very rich friend. मैं उसके घर जाता हूँ, यही लगा हुआ है. You've seen it. You know which one I'm talking about. This is like the Range Rover of rich people, like, ऐसे Range Rover खरीद लेते हैं, वैसे ही खरीद लेते हैं.
I think you should try the Hive. You'll change your mind. But commercial stuff aside, I think the thought process was very early in our conversation. I said, how do you build urgency? You build urgency through aspiration. So if you build the best product people have ever seen and it becomes a show-off factor, that's when people will spend the money.
That's your Apple playbook. This is Steve Jobs.
Well, to some extent, but if you look at it from a problem-solving perspective, Steve Jobs was, hey, I want people to not think about price. He said the computer is a bicycle for the mind. So he made all Apple products very creative. Air Purifier is not a creative, like it's not helping you produce things, but it's helping you be safe. But now if you can make it such that a billionaire will keep it in their living room and talk to 5 people who come to this house about it, you've landed it, right? So now if it becomes a show-off factor, people just want it, just like the fitness bands and rings, right? Whoop was designed for athletes. Everyone's wearing a Whoop band. Like you perhaps don't even work out and you have a Whoop band, right? So I get it's bought from the aspirational value that is giving me some data about my health and everyone has it, so I should have it. So if you take that approach of, hey, we build the best thing people have seen, but its performance is addicting. If you make the performance addicting, you make it look cool, put features that nobody else has put, suddenly the air purifier becomes a purchase conversation during Diwali.
Yeah, it becomes jewelry at that point,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Bro, you know what is very interesting about you? And I think Varun was right. Varun Duggirala, who connected us or who gave me your number. You really thought about this problem in more than one dimension. And I think probably most dimensions. I'm pretty sure you've got most bases covered. And why I'm saying this is, a lot of people around me or a lot of people I meet will have entrepreneurial instinct, right? They would want to do X or Y or Z. And they'd think about, okay, why not do clothes? Sure, you could do clothes. The trouble is inventory management. You would not know how many quantities to buy because you don't know how many quantities you can sell. So it's a large capital problem, and sometimes your capital can get stuck, which means you can lose if, right? So, okay, somebody thought inventory management. They didn't think branding. They didn't think marketing channels. They didn't think, and for standard businesses, there's a playbook. Clothing businesses have a playbook. You can incrementally go up or down depending on whatever. Your business is completely unique. And not only is it unique, everything from creating the technology, which is pure hard science, to then figuring out marketing, production line, finish, all of this, branding, how you want it to be sold. You want word of mouth from billionaires who will talk about it because it's a jewelry product. You've really thought about this problem. And what reflects in you thinking about this problem is that you've taken a very first principles approach. I haven't seen you really say something I could predict. There's not a repeat value. Achha, suna hua hai ye model, like I tried to say, this is the Apple thing. It's a very interesting way of thinking about it. And I'm curious if that's an active mental model you use, ki main problem dekh raha hu, to first principle dekhunga. Do you turn that on
Sometimes
or off?
most times it's worked really well in my favor and sometimes it backfired. So most times when I say it's worked really well is, like, for example, one thing I talk about all the time is not actually air pollution, it's talent. The challenge for Pran that came out of it is because we're inventing, you're bending rules of science. To bend rules of science, you should know the rules of science. If you never learned the fundamentals well enough in school, like we were forced, like we were choked down electrical engineering fundamentals because I won't clear the test, right? I don't want to repeat this really hard class because it's already a nuisance to deal with, right? So today also, if you put me in Pran's own engineering interview, I can at least get out of that interview because I know that, hey, they're only going to test fundamentals. This is cleared. If they ask me about the latest library or something, I won't know because I haven't written code in 4-5 years. But that's our entire interview process, right? We'll hard press you on fundamentals, whether you're a salesperson, design person, I'll just see how you're thinking, your exposure levels and so on. Now, why it became really hard to hire for Pran is we're a deep tech company, you're inventing things, then you want to manufacture these things. Imagine if my product blows up in a Tata Steel, what's going to happen, right? The company is going to be bankrupt. You're going to have loss of life on the shop floor. You're going to have reputational issues. Your investors are going to screw, and you're going to cause damage to a large corporation.
And you'll be sued. You'll be legally dragged.
So I cannot bet that risk on an engineer who cannot solve Ohm's law questions in the interview, right? That scares the life out of me. Or a structural engineer who cannot say, hey, at this force, this structure is going to have a moment in this direction. If you don't know that, there's no way you're touching my device. And even if you build the device, the speed at which we need to move, because it's venture scale, our prototypes are developed in like days, not in months and years, right? So a good example is Pran's carbon capture system was built in less than 60 days. A traditional company takes a couple of years to get to that same scale.
You said couple of years in 20 days?
So what we did is built in 60 days.
60 days.
Yeah.
2 months.
2 months.
And 2 years.
Yeah. And that's after spending millions of dollars for a traditional large company. Now, how do you do this?
How do you?
It's talent, man. Like you should, like the ability to decipher what is worth pursuing, how to hack these processes. Is this test worth running, or I should change the test, right? So that I get the desired outcome that this business or the product needs to achieve, not some random scientific paper. Because what we do is we build it, we see if the outcome gets achieved, then we push it through certification agencies. That, hey, this is what the gold standard is. I know the product will do it, then let the third party verify it. Instead of saying I'm going to go based on all the literature in the world, etc., we'll do literature survey in like 48 hours. That these are the things we need to know. What is it that people have done? What works, doesn't work? And we'll keep reading as we go along. But people are working 7 days a week, non-stop. And imagine giving really talented people freedom to build with a really ambitious goal. And you know, give them the platform that what you build will suddenly impact, 100 million people. Or for example, carbon capture, our deadline is before 2029, we want to remove 100 million tons of CO2 per year, just Pran. It's really hard, right? But because the bar is set so high, suddenly your talent bar is also really high. Now, one of my investors in Hong Kong, told me in 2022 when I had written to all our investors saying I'm really struggling on talent. There's never been an Apple or a Tesla to come out of India. Where do I hire from?
Agree.
India loses 7 lakh engineers per year. They all go to Silicon Valley or Germany. They're sitting there. So when our foreign investors tell us that, hey, the smartest engineers are Indian, I said, yeah, but they're in your country.
They're Indians, not in India.
Yeah. So there's a significant talent issue. And this investor in Hong Kong told me there's 1 billion people you're telling me you can't find it. Maybe you don't know how to hire. Today, that same narrative has come back to say that, hey, they've actually hired an incredible team in India. But there is now if they want to go from the current scale to becoming a Tesla equivalent, they need a global team. And so the team needs to be around the world, which is where Pran is today.
So you're trying to hire people around the world now?
Yeah, so like last night, most of the interviews until 3:30 this morning were people in the Bay Area. That we're currently hiring for. So we are scaling our India team. By all means, we have an incredible India team. And we're also scaling leadership in the Valley so that Pran gets this best of both worlds. Right? I think India is the best place to build climate tech out of. You're next to a large population. Anything you do will have large measurable impact. You can produce technology at scale, which you otherwise cannot at those cost points, say in the US. And then if you use the Silicon Valley mindset, risk-taking ability, capital and speed, you've created, almost like an unfair advantage by operating in India, but having this Silicon Valley team and mindset and even some customers there to build out the company.
So, what struck me about what you were saying is we are able to run literature surveys in 48 hours and we are able to do things in 2 months that would take large companies.
Not always, but I'm just saying we've done this in the past.
But you've markedly taken, what you said was we built the first prototype in $2 million where it generally would have taken $50 million.
Yeah.
So there's a measurable multiple of 25 that you've reduced, right? And you say that's all because of good talent.
Yes.
Now, I agree with our common friend Varun. It does sound too good to be true that you could reduce, I think the number one blocker in another man attempting to fly to space is, well, the technology obstacle will arrive, but the first obstacle is ambition, and ambition is limited by capital. Nobody sits there and is like, Mars chalte hain. Kaun laega crore rupees, right? Yeah. And so what I'm trying to say is that capital is a huge blocker in setting up extremely innovative businesses.
But money follows momentum, right? So if you took the Mars example. So I serve on the board of a program called the Strategic Lander Challenge in the US. So basically giving out grants to students to build reusable rockets, right? I'm not saying build a rocket that'll go to Mars. I'm saying build a tiny rocket. First demonstrate you can do a static fire, which is just build the engine, show me that it's generating certain thrust and it goes through the force cycle. Second is show me thrust vector propulsion, which is move that engine around like a SpaceX rocket does so it can direct itself to land. Third is a hop. get it up to a certain height and get it back down, right? Fourth is launch, go to, just get to space and then come back down. For each stage, we give $50,000, $100,000. And this was founded by an ex-Pran engineer in the US who, after Pran went to SpaceX, left SpaceX and started. It's a not-for-profit funded by all the people I told you, before, before this conversation. And so the money is following the fact that, hey, you're building something, you're making progress, right? Like, how did we get to a grant from Tyler Cowen? We had already built some things, right? So he can build conviction that, hey, if I give them $50,000, $100,000, they'll at least get someplace better. Now, what we did in 2 million would take another company 50 million to accomplish in the US. So suddenly we've built so much progress that momentum, and now the commercial momentum is what perhaps is the only thing someone can bet on and say that, hey, we'll give them more money. You can't wait for money to come to you. Start somewhere, right?
Are you saying that this multiple reduction of 25 is happening because you're over leveraged on talent? Like, you have so much talent that you can reduce the cost of your prototype by 25 multiples?
I wouldn't say over leveraged. I think it's just knowing where to put your money. A good example, there's a bunch of companies, startups building rockets out of India. Why is the fundraise that they have done, 1/10 of what Valley companies are doing to do the same stuff?
Wait, you were telling me there are startups building rockets in India?
Yeah, it's like Agnikul Cosmos, or this company called Galaxy. I invested in a company last year called Ethereal X that's building reusable rockets in India. Now, so these guys were the first ones to try and do it. They did some launch yesterday, but the company I invested in, Ethereal X, they are the ones who are, I think, first company doing reusable rockets. So they want to land it back.
And so why is the raise 1/10 of what they would do in Silicon Valley?
I think it's just like, one is the cost of doing things in India is lower.
Right.
But now, like, I can very candidly share that now if you want the like A++++ talent, like if you want to hire the VP of engineering at Apple, he's going to cost you $500,000. Now you need that kind of capital. But for you to get to that point to hire them, you have to build a really strong team, build the momentum, get the product. When you can raise 30, 40, 50 million at a reasonable valuation is when you can get that guy. So you can't wait that I don't have not every Valley company starts with a VP of engineering at Apple. Right. Unless you've built and sold companies and you've raised an outsized round early on, that's when you can get these people to join as founding members. You can't do that. Like, it's not common for that to happen.
Right. But so you're saying that the reason why Indian companies that are doing rockets are raising 1/10 is because it's cheaper to do it in India, and that's it?
The cost of their formally, like, salary of a good engineer will be, maybe great engineer here will be around 50 lakhs max.
Right.
They'll start at around 10 lakhs. So 10 to 50 you'll get an engineer. A starting engineer with no exposure in the US will be 100K. Like in the Valley, you can get for like 60, 80K, but like 100K.
Right.
So 85 lakhs with a starter versus 50 lakhs for a great engineer.
Right.
The great ones are not that abundant. But yeah, I'm saying, like, that's a great engineer in the Valley will be around 250K. Here is around 70K, like USD.
I'm also trying to understand if there is a ceiling to the dreamscape of India.
Yeah.
We talk about the Indian dream. It's a new term that's being thrown around, right? And there is an Indian dream. That Indian dream is, frankly, get through competitive exams and go to a great college. Whatever it is, it works for a lot of people. But as far as us dreaming to do great things is concerned, as a population, as an environment, as an ecosystem, have you found that there's a ceiling to that?
We penalize people for failure. The moment that goes away, I think people will take more risks.
Say more about this.
In India, people judge the failed prototype, they judge the failed pilot. You shouldn't care. Just keep moving on. Do 5 pilots, right? Elon Musk tried 4th rocket launch, succeeded. First 3 didn't succeed, right? So we penalize kids, startups. Like, I think even from an investment angle, like, I've been invited to do some of these deals from our own investor that, hey, we're investing in this, you work with rocket companies. That's how I got this one. I invested in a quick commerce company recently, but I'm not an investor. Like, this is, say, Pran is the investor is doing it and they invited me to do it. But every time that money went out, I assumed it's lost. I don't even think about it. So only when, like, the only thing you want to optimize for is upside. I've completely accepted the fact that all these companies will fail or can fail, right? In India, you get penalized that, hey, you started this company, you failed, as a result, you're a failure. Or, hey, you went to this college, you got horrible grades, now you're figuring out what you want to do, and as a result, you're a failure. That mindset needs to go.
And why is that mindset?
I think because we followed structure, we are so risk averse that, hey, if I'm doing something well off the described path and I don't succeed, I told you so will come into play. You don't listen to your elders. People have done it and succeeded. You think you're too smart. All of these things, right? So, and beyond the point, you have to start ignoring these things and say that you don't want to regret not having tried. And I think that's been the biggest driving factor for Pran, right? This problem that we're solving is so important. Forget for everyone else. Even if I just build it for my own family, it's worth pursuing.
I agree.
Yeah.
Spot on. What have you found in the science part of, like in solving, in inventing this?
Yeah.
I'm sure the first thing you do, okay, I'll give you a layman's perspective on what you would have done. Tell me where it needs correction or detailing, right? So you figure out you want to do this. Now you figure out, okay, what the hell is even air pollution? What is it made of? What are the particles involved? How small or big are these particles? What are the conventional ways in which you're filtering these particles already? And to what degree are these successful? So say a regular HVAC filter, which is an AC filter that people use, has a 40% success rate. Where is the 60% getting lost? Now, do I need an incremental innovation on existing technology to capture that 60%, or do I need a completely radical method of doing this?
You need incremental approach for the consumer one, but you need a radical approach for the societal one.
So yeah, talk to me about the science and the sort of the lesser known parts of the science and technology of this. Like, what did you innovate? What did you figure out in the science part of it?
So what became very evident is you don't have to build an air purifier, you have to build the whole stack. What I mean by stack is air quality sensors exist. They're not abundant, and they're all have tremendous variation. 2 sensors I buy from the same company will have different data points in the same location. Right?
So they're not standardized.
They should be, but they're not reliable, right? And then you have to improve reliability of that. That's what baseline you're dealing with, right? If the baseline keeps shifting, you don't know what you're solving anymore.
Agree.
So first was that. Second is, air pollution is a spatial problem. It's volume of air in a space that needs to be cleaned, not like one particle that needs to be filtered. So how do I create the ability to not only visualize and measure, but also solve the spatial problem first digitally? Because when I know how this problem is, like what are the flow patterns, the rate of introduction, dispersion, etc., I can try to make sense of how to solve that problem. So sensing, visualizing, and auto-solving, this falls under computational fluid dynamics. Then is filtration. Filtration is, whether you use our filterless technique or HEPA filter or activate, whatever. So some method to capture this. What product form factor to put this in? So
like, what is the physical shape?
Yeah, is it like a street lamp? Is it a tiny purifier like the Hive for a room?
Is it a pipe?
Yeah, is it a Mark II, which is our 6 feet tall filterless? What does it look like? Who's buying it? Where does it go? And then once you do this, how does the person build addiction that this actually works?
So then there's a product experience.
So then there's a SaaS layer on top of it. There's sensors, intelligence. Now it's gone too far with Hive. Like Hive is going to be so specific in the room that open the window to the left. Like it's crazy, the imaging on the product, right? So it's built the entire thing. And then, hey, this is the stack of the tech. And there's the stack on how to actually produce this tech.
Yeah. So like the assembly lines and the machines before that, right?
So what do we do in-house? What do we do externally? Where is it? Like there's a place where we've invested in a vendor site because I didn't want to wait 2 years to get the licenses. So I bought the machines, put it in the vendor site and amortized it over a certain production volume. So that helped us save the time and allowed us to build the company faster and get the product to customers faster.
Even for an entrepreneur, your challenges are very novel. Because you don't see this. Like I chat with entrepreneurs more and more now for my podcast. You don't see this. Nobody's buying their vendor site and then putting the machineries and amortizing the cost. Nobody's taking that kind of risk because nobody's playing these stakes. You're playing extreme stakes. And bro, just the fact, मतलब एक आदमी ना $200 million सिर्फ product experience से बना लेता है कि मैं एक ऐसी चीज़ बनाऊंगा that solves for product experience. You were saying I'm starting from sensing and imaging, which is a hard physics problem, and then moving up to the prototyping of the filter, which is also a physics materials electrical problem.
How do you actually test it? So I couldn't buy a test rig. We built 9 test rigs over 5 years to build one that if you come to my office tomorrow, you'll get the crazy experience that, hey, the purifier works, I can see it, I see the dust cloud, I see the data, I can see the dust collected. For you to trust and for us to reliably know this works, there was no test protocols. All the test protocols were, hey, if you own this filter, here's the efficacy of the filter.
Wow. So just what the company says. I just have to believe that. There is no way of knowing.
There is a test only to test the efficacy of the filter. What do you do if it's filterless?
Oh, what? Right. And then you are going all the way up to building the SaaS layer, the product experience layer, which is the design and the code problem of it, right? And then user behavior problem. So it's a user experience problem.
There's also a whole cybersecurity problem because I deployed in the largest companies in the country. That data is sensitive. It can bankrupt the company if that data goes out. So the amount of diligence that goes into our SaaS product getting deployed for our SIM card in the device to be allowed to upload data to the cloud.
You're a crazy guy, brother. Have you been told? Are you married?
No.
No. That's insane. That's a leap and a half as far as an entrepreneurial venture goes, bro. I cannot imagine you, by any stretch of the imagination, understood that the problem is this wide when you started. And the fact that you've committed to it throughout. Because एक type का challenge होता है failure मिल जाना. Your challenge is, oh, I think I solved it. No, boss, there is a whole layer before and after you've got to solve. And it just keeps expanding. Layer after layer. 1 layer, 3, 5. And then you are building an entire industry almost at that point. Right?
You know, when we first raised venture capital, there's a there's a fund called, one of the smaller investors was not smaller, but one of the investors, a fund called Climate Angels based out of Delhi. So Vijay Shekhar Sharma and all these guys there. So Sumit, who used to run the fund at the time, they had gone out of their way, by the way, to get government approval to invest in our US entity. So they're very nice people, but he told to his LPs, Pran will expand the air purification industry in a manner not seen. And he saw it far before even I could describe it in those words. That he said air purifiers have existed. The stack has never existed. So for one company to do the stack and to say that using the stack now clean air is a reality everywhere, right? Because air is particles of all sizes, pollutant gases, so your VOCs, carbon dioxide, which shows whether the air is stale or fresh, and then you have the moisture, which is humidity or humidification, dehumidification, which changes your experience of the air. Now, sometimes we do, people think, hey, you're consumer also, you're industrial also, you have a huge carbon capture plant also. It's the same shit, man. It's air. Whether I put it in form A, form B, form C, we do only one thing.
You're solving different scales.
Yeah, and there's a business has to eventually generate revenue. There has to be rate of revenue. Consumer generates every day. B2B generates over 3 months. They all have different cycles, but eventually it adds to revenue of the company. At the same time, scales impact, solves at different scale. We're doing the same thing, right? So often as people think Pran is you have a computer vision team, all they said, no, we never sell the computer vision, right? We built it so that I can sell you the other product.
Right. It's in service of the final output, which is clean air, which should be a fundamental right, which should be an obviousness in your head. And to serve that purpose, to make it cool, to make it look cool, to make it believable, to make it all those things, I have to do these things, right? Damn. Good job, man. So you were telling me, you figure out what the pollutants are, and the pollutants are carbon dioxide, moisture, you said organic or gases.
So particles are the pollutants, so particulate matter. Then you have volatile organic, so formaldehyde, benzene, all these when you use perfume, these volatiles get released aerosol into the air. Then you have CO2, which is not a pollutant. It's a greenhouse gas, but at the same time, humans exhale CO2. So if we don't have ventilation in this room, over time the CO2 levels will rise. You'll start getting a headache. Again, it has tied to productivity, disease spread. So if CO2 is really high in the room, one person's coughing, everyone will start getting it because the air is stale, right? So all of these impact your indoor air quality. But then if you figure out how to deal with it indoors with a sorbent, now it's hey, but the planet is warming because of CO2. I have to remove CO2 from the atmosphere. Let me figure out a scalable way to do that. That's the fastest way to reverse global warming. That's where Pran's carbon capture work comes into play. Right?
And it's so accurate, brother, that even if you're not able to touch wood, but even if you're not able to solve, let's say with Mark 2 or Mark 3 or whichever, the exact problem, because there is a modeling, there's a modeling question here as well, which is how possible is it to have a public-private partnership to install these things, and whether they will get stolen or whether they will get dysfunctional. Even if you're not able to do that, you've basically reshaped the imagination of solving this problem by doing it.
We proved it. We have patents on it. For whatever reason, if we don't succeed as a business, the solution exists for the world.
Exactly. You've upped the innovation level in this particular corner, very important corner, very unignorable corner that we happily seem to ignore, but you improved the possibility scape of it. And that's saying a lot at your age, which is 25, 26. Yeah, that's saying a lot, bro. People take 3 generations before they're able to change a single possibility scape. You've done it in 8 years of adulthood. That's a lot. Compliments for that.
No, I think we have an incredible team. If you see, they work really, really hard. I think I sell the story and all that. But I don't think this is not at all, and I keep iterating, it's not a one-man.
And as
More
much as I
than
believe
200 people have like driven this, and crazy smart people to make it.
And as much as the credits go to your team, no doubt. But having that sort of vision, the courage, the pragmatism, the ability to run around and grind yourself through hell sometimes, to take rejections on your face with people you know understand lesser than you about this subject matter, right? When people don't see your vision. And to go through all of that emotional set is in itself a very formidable job to accomplish. Beyond this is the innovation and so on and so forth. I don't want to keep this in the zone of flattery, but I mean it as a 29-year-old myself. Good job. Very, very impressive. I want to take you back just a little bit and still trying to understand the technology part of this. Yeah. Tell me about what is this filterless thing? What have you built that the world hadn't figured out?
Yeah, so I mean, filterless systems have kind of sort of like existed, but filterless is, I would say, more of a overarching word. There's nuances to it. So what's existed is, for example, your vacuum cleaner is filterless. It builds a cyclone inside the vacuum cleaner that makes heavy particles settle and the rest of the air leave, so it can't capture fine particles, right? So what in the industrial scale, that's called a cyclone separator. Then you have something called an electrostatic precipitator. These are there in cement, steel factories, sizes of buildings, huge plates, electrodes, basically generating bunch of ions. These ions stick to the pollutants, and then the pollutant sticks to that opposite charge plate. Very large. They have ozone generation issue, electromagnetic noise issue, but all cement, steel plants have one, right? Very expensive, like 20 crore, 100 crore type installations. Then you have something called photocatalytic oxidation, which is using light and chemistry with titanium sheets to, again, charge particles of one form and then make them settle, which is what government tried with some of these Vayu project installations in the country. And then comes what Pran is doing. Now, we didn't invent the physics. What we said is, how do you take the physics and actually make it in a form factor and a size and the performance that allows people to use it abundantly? So we also charge particles, right? But if you see Pran's Mark II versus all the other guys, for the first time, someone's taken this physics firstly and made it vertical. All of these have horizontal airflow. Pran has a vertical airflow. Second is, none of these have like large fans attributed to. So there's like a huge pipe carrying the dust, goes through this, and then whatever arbitrary amount of air leaves from the other side, and the fan is somewhere really far. For us, the fan is right next to the core. Now, why that makes it really hard is because suddenly the force on the particles exerted by this powerful fan is greater than the electrical charge we can use to separate it. So it's really hard. How do you separate like PM1 sized particles with that? Second is, you want to separate it, almost 99% type efficiency with the separation. If you use a lot of energy, it becomes unsafe because dust itself is explosive, right? So when we look at a pigment company, etc., even just rubbing it at the right energy level in your hands can cause a dust explosion. It can burn down the factory. So when you're charging particles, it's like a bomb, right? So if you're charging particles and you're not able to do it at a low energy level, you're making a very unsafe core. So how do you make a safe core in that 6-foot form factor with the fan right on top? then couple it with an automated cleaning system such that the dust can be recovered and put back into production process, and to do it at a price and safety form factor, like the where it's plug and play, a single person can move it around and so on. And then to add to the layer of complexity, the Mark II uses as much energy as a gaming computer.
So that's not a lot at all.
Yeah, it's like 1200 watts for the Mark II. And then to put it at the price point which competes with every technology that's existed, which you are phasing out, and then all the intelligence. So the filterless tech, just the balancing of that physics is incredibly hard because one, you can't see the particles. How are you running the test? So you have to engineer the test system that will allow you to test this core. Then you'll continue to optimize it. There's no simulation platform to do it. The world's most advanced simulation company, ANSYS, is a partner of Prance. If their software was not able to help us build this, which means we had to build the models ourselves and also then do it experimentally to validate whether it holds true. And to do experimentally means to build the experiment itself, right? That is what took 5 years to accomplish, because you're inventing stuff every day, right? And you're going after first principles and saying, hey, but ion is only created at 4500 volt, which means I can only start at 4.5 kV. Then as I go at 4.5 kV to say 10 kV, but if I don't have enough distance between the opposite poles, it'll create a spark. If a spark is created, it can cause a dust explosion. So there's so many constraints which you have to rely on first principles to do it.
And so what did you figure out? Like, what is you said the physics already existed. You found a form factor for
Physics that existed is how to create a charge, how to charge a particle and collect it. That's all that we've borrowed. Yeah.
Right. And the rest of it, the form factor, the affordability, the sort of making it venture scale and sort of
safety. And efficacy was the hardest part. Like, because as soon as you blow more air in, your efficiency drops. Now to offset this efficiency, you have to increase energy. If I increase energy, sure, I'll capture more, but then it's a dust explosion risk and an ozone gas risk. I can't do that either.
What I'm actually trying to get at is, if this problem's plagued us forever, which, by the way, it's very interesting. You were telling me earlier that your parents or your grandparents, some older couple, were saying that we would just think, aaj hawa kharab hai, aaj hawa saaf hai. I thought this is a post-2015-16 phenomena, because I don't remember Delhi air being like this back when I was a school kid. Do you think it was like that? No, right? Like when we were younger.
Maybe we didn't measure.
Yeah, but bro, I mean, being in Delhi is a unique experience in the winter because you can see it. You don't have to measure it, right? It's a very aesthetic experience more than anything else. Like there are certain days where and to be very fair, it's the same for Mumbai. Like maybe on this present day, I don't know. But if you fly back to Mumbai, you can see that it's more grainy and dusty in Mumbai right now than it's in Delhi.
It's terrible. If you see these Instagram brokers, right, who show these 50 crore, 100 crore houses in Bombay, it's like, there's no view. What are you selling? It's like only pollution outside. I can't see the building that you're...
Right.
Yeah.
But no, the larger point I'm trying to drive is that there is an aesthetic element. I'll give you another example. This is my hypothesis. Completely could be stupid. Very early on into being in America, I went in 2017. And so this was post-pollution awareness in Delhi. And I remember clicking a picture and I was like, yaar, yahan to matlab aise sun one bhi bada clear dikhta hai, aise photo lo to matlab. And I later realized that's the dustiness of this land. Like it's so dusty that you can see it in pictures. You can see aesthetic difference. In Delhi, pollution's an aesthetic experience. And I remember very clearly it was not the case. These days, it's been very windy around here. And not only that, I think it rained a few days ago. And if you drive right after we are done at 6 or 7 when the sun is setting, it's actually beautiful. A sense of beauty I haven't seen in a long time. It's still about 110 here. Yeah. What I'm trying to get at is that this idea that pollution existed forever. Are you sure about that? Like, is that a measurable phenomena? Do we know about that?
Yeah, I mean, so I mean, you have to check the dates, right? But even historically, there was a time, not just in India, but even like take New York, right? New York went through the Industrial Revolution, etc. It had pollution. Same with Britain. So
Shanghai very recently.
Correct, right? And the way they solved it in China is they literally just moved things further away. Apart from, regulation, etc., they said, let's just disperse pollution over a larger area so that it's not concentrated. And that's like, I don't support it at all. Please, whoever's watching, do not borrow from this, right?
Right.
Because what industries here have started doing is they've increased the height of the chimney so that the dust disperses over a larger distance. Right. But it's criminal to do this.
Yeah. Why I'm asking that is because if over 40 years this problem has existed, to my memory it's 10 in Delhi, but say it's even 20 years of very capable, ambitious, well-educated, fairly resourced people have come and gone. And nobody else has attempted a solution like yours, because if the physics existed, and it's a question of, and by no means this is to trivialize what you've done, and if the physics has existed, and it's a question of form factor and affordability and sort of figuring out the market points like that, either you figured out something extremely innovative, which was a hard problem that only you could cross because you put your mind to it, or there has been enough incentive to solve this problem. Why else has nobody figured this?
It's like
What is the defining obstacle?
you need to care like incredibly deeply to commit your life to doing it, right? I accepted the outcome of failure when I started it. That's so that every day I'm going in is with like a, to optimize upside. Very few, and I was also like incredibly lucky to have a certain privilege that I've been building things since I was very young. Got like when during my formative years, got the opportunity to work with Ramesh Raskar, right? Then had the opportunity to go to a great college, and in this got a lot of different unique exposures, right? Had I not built those products before, I would have not had this Apple-esque design first thinking to build these things. Had I not solved the ambitious problems with Ramesh Raskar's team earlier, I would not have the risk-taking ability or confidence to do this, right? Or not going to a great school where I was forced to learn fundamentals, I would never been able to solve this problem. So it was a right place at the right time kind of situation. I think there are definitely people way smarter than me who could have solved this problem earlier. I think it just at that time, the old mindset used to be if you work hard and build a career, the future is going to be great. So it meant how do I make most money for my family and buy a good house or buy a good car, and that is what the pursuit was. For our generation, it's not for everyone, but for many of us who understand the numbers, it is like, hey, there's an existential threat to humanity and civilization from climate change. And in all things climate, what's affecting people the most today is poor air quality. So that urgency will come from our generation more than it came from previous generations. Like environment was always the least exciting, least sexy part of the engineering domain, right? People say I want to build aircrafts, fighter jets, rockets. Never like I want to solve environmental issues. People thought you're lame for trying.
It is pretty lame. Like, I mean, no offense. No offense. It is the least sexy part of any conversation.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this because I find it the least sexy. I also do. But the larger point is try interesting anybody in a conversation about climate change anywhere except where, pretentious people get around and pretend that they're very smart. It's very difficult to get an organic person on a train or a bus to be like, "Abhi, terko pata hai climate change?" I was like, "Kya bata? Mere ko bata." Nobody wants to know this, bro. Like, it's a needless headache in the back of my head. I can do nothing about it. There's diffusion of responsibility. Problem is too scaled. And guess what? I'm still alive today, and I'm going to be alive tomorrow. So there's many ways in which you can distance the problem away from you. It's like I've never been very fond of climate conversations. It's very boring.
So the only way to make it exciting is to make it aspirational. Electric cars were boring as hell until someone came and built like a ultra nice looking futuristic electric car. Suddenly the industry popped up, right? That's what you have to hack. Space. Everyone thought governments build space
Scale solutions, yes.
Yeah, and then came Elon Musk, and he's like, most of the space programs in the world today are being done by SpaceX.
Right.
And when I say space program, like I mean
Launches.
number of launches per year.
Right. Or 90%.
Yeah.
Right. That's the figure.
That's a private business that someone's running.
So 90% of all space flights to the International Space Station, to the space, whatever, satellite launches are controlled by a private entity.
Yeah.
Who is now also de facto Prime Minister of the US. That position did not exist until like January 20th. Right? Are you in touch with him?
With Elon? Not Elon directly. Many people on his team are investors in our company. So we have like first degree connect if we need to, but there's never been like you want to be very mindful when you get that. If you want to talk to him, you have to have like I remember the guy telling me, hey, don't talk to Elon for 15-20 million. When you need like couple 100 million, you should talk to him if at all you want to go down that.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Does Tyler speak the same way off a microphone as well? Very like full sentences, self-sufficient.
Tyler is, very... I really like how deeply he thinks before he answers my question when I ask him.
Bro,
when my questions are really not that like hard, but he wants to give me the right answer because I will run off in that path and try to
Right.
attack it. So for example, I'd asked him how to get this one big person to lead a 30 million type of round at like 11 in the night, and he thought about it directly. It's like, they still think that India is a country of goons, etc. The underlying message comes is that if this technology and company is so great, why aren't their own people funding it? That's the barrier you have to cross. That's what Tyler told me. There's no issue in making the intro, right? He said, figure out that answer before you go into that meeting.
That's solid.
Yeah.
I also think if you've ever, because my consumption of him is, I don't know if I've read his blog, Marginal Revolution.
Yeah.
Right? I've read the blog and it's literally tweet-sized
Yeah.
blogs that he puts, very brilliant.
His emails to me are one-liners.
That's it, right?
Yeah.
I think I've probably exchanged an email with him when I was in college because I was that big a fan. And if you listen to his podcast also, it's the most different podcast in terms of the questions that come up, because those questions have very little to do with the person there. They're almost ancillary in a way that you discover the guests' preferences, their tastes, the way they think from those questions. Like, as a questioner also, it's a very interesting approach.
He just said a few days ago, the limitation of AI is humanity.
Which means that
Our ability to develop the AI is what limits the AI. When it
Sure.
learns how to develop itself, it's going to compound
Right.
like that level of clarity to say in one sentence. I think it's,
genius.
so-
What are the current challenges, or where are you at currently? What are the challenges you're facing, and how does the future look like?
I mean, there's always so many challenges. I think we're more excited than ever to try and solve this problem. Yes, there is a certain US presidency. Climate is not going to be a concern, but it's a civilization issue. And I think if you can build a large enough business case, it's worth, So we have that angle playing for us right now. Then second angle is, because we moved from US to India, and while we're still a global company, a lot of our customers, manufacturing team is mostly in India. So we often get pictured as an India company, and then, the comfort for global investors to put in is a little lower because there are also regulatory challenges. They don't get exits faster, all of those things. So we still are, that's one thing that I'm actively working. And it's not like that big of it. I'm just saying what last 24 hours have been for
This is your diary moment.
for me. So I think so that small things. Then very excited to be rehiring in the Valley and also scaling India team. We doubled our commercial production capacity in this month. So excited. It's very you enter office and you see 2 times the number of devices in front of you. It's unreal, the view. Incredibly excited to scale carbon capture this year because we built it. It's real. It works. Now it's
But that's going to be a public-private partnership.
No, it's Pran will build the large facilities that removes the carbon and then issues the credit to companies around the world.
So the companies can buy the credit from
Yes.
you.
But this
That's your
is
business
not
model.
a trading, right? We're actually removing the CO2. I can either give it to you or pump it underground.
Right.
And that's removed from the atmosphere.
Right. So there is, it's not like a car company that's reduced carbon emission and selling
Yes.
carbon tax
It's
that
not
way.
that.
No.
It's actually reversing global warming. I'm pulling it out of the Earth's atmosphere and then pumping it underground, reversing as fossil fuel, basically.
Bro, I'm still very interested because एक तो pollution हो गया, and pollution's you can say greatly amplified problem in India, but climate change is a global problem with global entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Why has somebody not built an analog to carbon capture?
There are so many.
there are.
We have competitors.
Oh,
in
you have
this
competitors
space. And
in
in
that.
fact, we are later than others.
Okay.
It's just for us, we prioritized air pollution because no one was going after it. No one built a Tesla for clean air. We were trying to do that. But our vision statement has been the same since 2017, rebuilding Earth's atmosphere. Air pollution comes under lower atmosphere where people are walking and breathing. Upper atmosphere is your planet, right? Which is how do you control global warming? That's by removing greenhouse gases. The most abundant one is CO2.
Okay. And on the level of Mark II being installed in cities and whatever, where is there a challenge there?
Cities, we're not selling it because it's an infinite volume problem. So Mark II, for example, recently Indian Navy reached out to us for a specific site in India where there are food stores.
We can't name that site.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can, so I'd rather not. So now for those food stores, what happens is because the grain volumes are so high, there's a lot of dust, becomes very difficult to deal with. There are pests. If you can remove that immediately with a filterless purifier, there's no recurring cost. That's an application. We put it in different factories, food, chemical, pharma, minerals, mining, all of these guys, right, on their shop floors. We have devices going into homes, offices, schools, gyms, right, for just the Hive product. And then we've built all this sensor platform, which we're kind of like doing in parallel with governmental organizations that let me put on every other street lamp. And not only will we give you all the air quality data, that's the smallest, most trivial thing, but the fact that we'll be able to create an automated solution street by street for air quality, whether it's a purifier or whether it's increase this wall by 10 feet more, all of this is happening using our computer vision tool, right? So I want to sell or offer that tool to India rather than just a purifier, that let us solve the problem, use this data, create the most dense health data set on the planet for the urban environment. Satellites don't give you that resolution that you want for particulate matter, etc.
Of course. Damn. How long have we been at it? Ek minute, how long do you think we've been talking?
2 hours?
2 hours? 150.
Yeah.
Do you have any questions or suggestions for me?
I'm just curious, what made you want to do this, man? Like, you interviewed the chief minister of Delhi and asked him about air pollution. Why talk to... And that too, I remember the message you sent me.
Chief minister.
Yeah, ex-chief minister.
Right.
Yeah. And, I remember your message, and it was perhaps me living under a rock when you texted me saying, "Hey, I'm Prakhar," and Varun referred you to me. I was like, "Hi, Prakhar," because it had no context, right?
Dude, it's so weird, because you can do the opposite mistake of over-introducing yourself, and the other person like, "I know who you are, bro." Like, right? So I always do, "Hey, I'm Prakhar. Do you know who I am, or should I introduce myself?" And it's a very polite question. I'm not saying, "Tere ko bataun kya main kaun hu?" That's not what I'm saying. What made me want to do this is, the conversation speaks for itself, bro. I cannot. Look, maybe there's a world of you. Maybe there's 20 people like you that you know of, like those guys doing rockets and whatever. I don't know them. I want to platform people like that. That's one, let's say, one part of my mission. I think putting attention on you is a lot better than all the other opportunities I get in that way. 2, when in the am I going to get access to learn about deep tech? I mean, we didn't go there precisely, but the technology, the business, the venture dynamics, the climate dynamics of all of this in 2 hours. I think it makes for a very interesting conversation. And the difference between the conversation I'm having right now versus something I would have had with somebody who's not as invested in this as you are, is I could have learned what particles exist in air. I could have learned the sources of those particles, and then what are the active efforts to solve it. And it would have been, you studied in India, right? There school India mein tha,
Yeah.
right? You remember when we'd write paragraphs or essays for whatever, it was a word vomit कि भाई अब ये इतने लाइन का है, 7 marks का question है तो 1 page लिखना पड़ेगा. There is a conversation I can have that looks like that कि मेरे को 1 घंटा भरना है या 1.5 घंटा भरना है तो उससे ऐसे questions पूछ लो जो mass appeal के हैं. I would never get this information for somebody who's thought so deeply. The fact that you are young is ornamental, bro. Even if you're a 50-year-old, it's still very impressive, all the stuff that you know and you've thought of. So I was betting on this as an experiment, and I think this experiment's working. I got to learn a lot. I think just watching you from a distance in the future is going to be very interesting. Very few entrepreneurs like you. I know enough in Bangalore and in Gurgaon. Very few guys like you. The rate of innovation that happens in India is largely either marginal or an imported innovation, which is like, this thing works in the US, just bring it in India, Indianize it. Very rarely do we see somebody attempting something that's not even being attempted in any other part of the world.
US guys are talking to us and I say this with like utmost humility, so that people don't feel limited by geography, by capital. I think you should just care very, very deeply if you want to build a company. There's faster ways to make money. I could have made, company would be 100 times the value if I started, a software company, perhaps at the time like some of my friends did. But I don't think I would be as invested in building those businesses or caring about them. I have a very dear friend who was a problem solver, met him at Google Science Fair. He used to solve very difficult problems. Eventually went to Ivy League school, realized, hey, money is the language that people speak, started a fintech company, crazy valuations, grew very quickly. But I think that's a loss to civilization if a person of that talent stops solving real problems and starts building fintech apps. And I've told him on the face because I'm close enough to be able to tell him that. But so I hope more people don't feel limited by geography too.
Are there other deep problems that you cannot solve because of your commitment that you think are open game for people?
Water, food.
Water and food.
Critical. Energy. How do we revamp the grid? not lithium-ion batteries and solar energy, etc. How do you like fix the grid? So if every car on the street goes electric, you won't have energy. I saw a diesel generator outside for this.
Yeah, for this.
Yeah.
And it's not even working properly.
Yeah, right.
Idiots, huh?
Right. But how do you like fix the grid if every car had to become electric or large number? A grid can't support it.
That's fucking brilliant, man.
You can't like dig all the wires and change all those. What do we do?
It's so obvious.
Right.
And the impact surface area is so high if you fix the grid. But that's a public private partnership. That's hard to implement.
The
that
other is
way.
nuclear energy. If I could invest or build, if I were to build another company, I'd start a nuclear company today. I don't have bandwidth to do it, but yeah, if someone's building it, if I can be of any help, by all means. But nuclear energy is huge. I think more than solar, wind, that's what will help control climate change in near term.
Yeah, I think the solar and the wind. I don't know if we've learned how to do it affordably or even manage the electricity we produce from it. Right? There's a lot of loss.
Efficiency is very low
Yes.
for solar, and by all means, I'm proponent of renewable energy. But
Right.
I think just the land cost, the scaling cost, maintenance. Most of the panels sold in India are from China. That to second-hand panels, which are used and resold here. That's how the cost is so low. So it's almost dumping, right? And with windmills, the challenge is very expensive to maintain. People don't like how it looks, so they don't want it around their neighborhood. Then it's if you go with the really nice ones which change direction, then the cost is astronomical to actually.
And you
put.
also need a specific geography for that wind to blow,
yeah.
right? So it's very limited space.
Yeah.
And I think I agree that nuclear is probably the way it seems like the most obvious thing, but there's a large risk that comes around it, right?
Yeah.
And then there's intergovernmental pressures for researching in nuclear that also occur. Because from what I understand, nuclear energy and nuclear bombs are not very distant from each other in the method of creation. You can do it in the same facility, and that becomes a concern, no?
I mean, so I don't think it's exactly the same grade that's getting utilized for energy versus. There's
Weaponry.
also variants of it, but yes, can a nuclear power plant become dangerous? Yes. But it's a solved problem, right? So whether it's like, so I think there was a famous video that came out in 2016 or 2017 that got all of us inspired called India Is Innovating. Somebody made that video and said we have the largest thorium reserves in the world and we should use that to build nuclear energy and missiles and stuff. I don't know where that went. Because uranium we may be importing, but thorium we have abundantly locally. So what are we doing? I don't know. So I am not right to ask what are we doing, but just like, hey, how come those plants are not everywhere?
Right. I actually heard this from, in context of India, from Peter Thiel, actually. He was talking about it. He said, the worry about spreading nuclear energy was the unique case study is what happened in India. They built the bomb.
Yeah.
And that worried the US government a lot. He was talking about the conspiratorial sort of part of it. But I hear that is a concern in the shadows. But anyway, man, I think this has been phenomenal. It's one of the most effortless conversations I've had. I think you're a genius who's going to do great things in life. And whenever you want the microphone to talk about things, I'm always happy to help.
Really, and please just come see even without the camera, see what we're doing.
I'm not going to carry a camera, bro. What the fuck? I'm not going to carry a camera. In a factory, what are you thinking?
People like one of our other friends came with a camera a few weeks ago. So just to see it, like we don't want anything out of it, but because you speak to a lot of relevant people, this is a very important topic, and I think the more excited you are about it, that's the gets the word going.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much
of
for
course,
doing this.
Thanks for having me.